Samantha, how are you feeling today?
Hi, feeling good. Recently, as a commission on gender-based violence, we've implemented one of my ideas. So it's been like very busy
Okay.
with work, but at the same time, um, it's been good vibes and energies, especially working with NGOs, basically.
What idea was it? I'm curious now.
So it was a fund for NGOs
Okay.
so that they can implement their projects and develop their own projects
Okay.
to address obviously issues related to gender-based violence and domestic violence.
Okay.
I love working with NGOs, to be honest. So the fact that we can also provide this support, financial support in addressing and for them to develop their own ideas and their own initiatives,
Okay.
it also sees the creativity as well in their endeavors as well.
Sure. So you sort of like, I'm not very well versed in funds. So you imported the funds in a way and you help NGOs to apply for it, or you
So
apply on their behalf?
we managed to get some funds
Okay.
from our end as a public entity. We
Okay.
had some funds, and we issued a call for interest, and they had to apply.
Apply for it to
Yeah,
get the funds.
it's quite a process. So
Like,
so
yes.
you have the obviously the preparation. So you have to prepare the guidelines and
For sure.
the parameters of the fund, and then you have the application process. So you have to support in that process.
Okay.
And obviously now we awarded these funds, and we have 10 projects. But obviously, you need to support every project throughout the implementation, the reporting as well. So it's quite a process and
For
quite
sure.
intense. But yeah, but it's I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to fruition.
Would you be aware on where these funds go or where they will be used, basically?
Yes, because
Okay.
it's
It's part of the
it's
application.
based on
Ah,
the
okay.
application. So
All right.
the application involves having the scope of the project,
Okay.
addressing specific objectives that we included,
Okay.
also having how the activities that they're going to include, target groups that they're going to be addressing,
Okay.
and they're all different projects as well, and they target different target groups. So some of the organizations will be working with young people, some
Okay.
organizations are focusing on a research on the elderly. Another project focuses on demand for prostitution, basically, but the demand, so buying the services instead of why women go into prostitution, but why do men buy services for
Okay.
prostitution. The elderly project I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different
Okay.
projects. Some of them are workshops, so training professionals as well. Fondazione Satar, for example, are working on disseminating a booklet, also providing training to
Okay.
educators. The booklet would be targeting the students. So there's a lot of different projects, and I'm
Quite a
just
wide
excited about it.
variety. It
Yes,
should be.
yes,
So
yes,
there's quite a variety.
yeah.
Someone, they're quite young. How did you find your voice at such a young age to um, enroll and be quite an advocate and an activist as well within the disability sector and now in the domestic violence and gender-based violence?
I think from a young age, I was always interested in the social aspects. I'm very observant as a person, and I recall from a young age there would have been situations where no one would have told me what's happening, but I needed to understand what's happening. So I used to be quite curious, as well. And obviously, I don't know, I feel like it kind of happened. I know it didn't just happen. But then my younger sister has a disability as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I also have a disability, but I found about that later on in life. So there was that, and I've become aware of disability and how it affects the family, and obviously seeing her grow up, and also how society related to her and her different education trajectory, for example. So that was intriguing,
Hmm.
in itself, and but then apart from that, when I was a girl guide. I still am at heart.
Okay.
Um, but obviously I don't involve myself in the association anymore. But I think it was through Girl Guides that I found my voice. So until I was 7 years, I was really quiet. Like I wouldn't talk. You know, if my mom asked me to do something, I would just get up and do it. That changed then, to her dismay. But eventually, I think we always say that I made this particular friend who's more energetic, you know, who's bubbly, outspoken from a young age. Was always like this, and we say that it was then that I started to find my voice,
Okay.
literally, as in. But then through Girl Guides really helped me because I started taking on leadership roles within the Girl Guides as I grew a bit older. But then as the Stop the Violence project started within the association. So it's an international project, and I think that was a turning point in my life. So at that point, when we had the initiation, the initial training for that program, um, I was in a relationship, which um, I realized I realized then that it wasn't a healthy relationship, and I left the convention that we had, and a few days afterwards or a few weeks afterwards, I actually broke up. And it made me realize, you know, that this is not on. And I started getting involved in the project, started showing my interest. So that's basically, you know, where it all started. I mean, then again, through Girl Guys, I had advocacy roles.
Okay.
Eventually, I also contested to be part of the National Youth Council. Um, and I was the first girl guide to do that. I was
Okay.
also the first youth representative in the national board of the Girl Guides.
All right.
Um,
In this area, I'm quite well versed because I'm very much involved in the scout movement. So
yes. So I think for me, Girl Guides did, you know, it was life changing for me, and not everyone might see it the
yeah,
same, but for me, I always refer back to it when I'm asked a
yeah,
question similar to this, um, because I there were times in my life where I thought, if I'm not going to make this decision, or maybe looking back, if I didn't make the decision, or if it wasn't Girl
yeah,
Guides, I wouldn't have um, taking take
yeah.
you know, I wouldn't be who I am today and where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it mattered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It mattered a lot.
I can very much resonate with that. I mentioned this quite frequently, even in the coaching sessions that I give, and the training that I provide to companies as well. I think Scouts gave me the opportunity to sharpen my skills.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of which is communication, for example,
Yes.
and to be exposed to certain situation
Hmm.
from a young age as well. You mentioned leadership as well, dealing with people,
Yes.
sometimes dealing with parents as well. So it gives
Yeah.
you the opportunity and the space
Hmm.
to try things.
Hmm. And it also gives you the confidence,
Yeah,
because it's all about the space.
yeah,
Because if you have the space to do that, you know, it's a low risk space
yeah.
to build that confidence in
And you're
yourself.
sheltered.
It is kind of shell, but at
Yeah,
the same time, they're not babying you.
yeah,
So it was never like, okay, Hanini, if you do it wrong, you know, it's not like that. It's
definitely.
okay, you can try again. If you made a mistake, you can try again, or this is how you can do it better, you know. So I think it was that, and even the skills, the transferable skills, I think that you get.
Hmm.
I mean, in my work today, I still sometimes, you know, think I can do this but I can do this because I got that skill from a young age as a guide. So
Hmm.
and obviously even Scouts,
Hmm.
it's the same, you know, family of
Yeah.
organizations, and it's very good that as an association it's still going, and both organizations are quite strong still.
Hmm.
It helps young people, in my opinion,
Yeah,
quite a lot.
definitely.
Yeah.
Samantha, at one point, because I can go all night talking about scouts and how it
Yes,
impacted my
of
life, so
course.
I'm trying to
Of
hold back
course.
on that a little bit. What I want to touch upon, Samantha, with you is the concept of disability, because I believe that there is a lot of misconceptions, perhaps, and it's a quite a sensitive topic. The question for me is that you mentioned that you have a younger sibling with a disability, and then you found out later on in life that you also have a disability. Um, what is the journey that one takes? So still trying to frame the question. What is the difference basically with someone being born with a
Okay.
disability and someone that discovers later on in life? What is the difference in that?
It's not an easy question to answer because obviously everyone has their own experience
Definitely,
and has a very individual
for sure.
experience. Apart from discovering a disability later on in life, there's also acquiring a disability later on in life. So, through an accident, for
Yep.
example, or a chronic condition. Um, I think one of the things I'm more grateful for that I wasn't, that we weren't aware. So basically, I have Marfan syndrome, which is a rare condition. It affects different connective parts of the connective tissues in the body. Um, uh, for me, it affects mostly my aorta, so which is the main artery in the body, and I had to undergo 3 heart surgeries. I'm losing count. I think yes, it was 3. Um, uh, and it's a condition that affects different aspects of my life. For I think looking back, the biggest for me achievement in all of, not achievement, like what I'm most grateful for, because I'm sure that if we knew about it from a young age, as soon as I was born, they told my parents that I have this condition, and my parents are quite liberal, so even in sense of how they work and support my sister, again, we're not like sheltered
Okay.
family, but it would have been very different. I wouldn't have been as independent as I was. I wouldn't have been allowed to play with my friends and with my cousins from a young age because, if I get hit by a ball in my head, it could affect my eyes. So there would have been much bigger protection
Okay.
in that sense. So the fact that we didn't know about the condition at a young age, that was a positive. At the same time, because I didn't know about the condition, in 2018, I had to rush to the emergency because my aorta ruptured, and I mean, it was a life or death situation. So maybe I'm not, um, I'm not maybe in the right mental frame to be saying, like, I'm grateful for not knowing
Hmm.
because things turned out how they did, because
Okay.
even though I was in that situation, it made me stronger.
Could you have known at a young age? Was there the possibility? Because
There were signs
okay,
that medical experts could have
okay,
identified, even a GP could identify.
okay,
So, for example, the fact that I'm tall is one of the signs, not just because I'm tall,
okay,
but I'm tall because of my condition. A lot of people obviously don't know that because I have long limbs. Enough. What other signs? There was, for example, my rib bone is coming out. So that's
okay.
another sign. Um, uh, I mean, usually if you have like 3 of these signs, I don't know the signs, all the signs,
Fair enough.
because I know I have it, and
Yes.
um, um, but it could have been identified from a younger age. And there were moments when I did say, like, I wish when we went to check about my breastbone, like they would have told me, okay, let's check for the other signs, and then test.
Hmm.
But at the same time, as I said, like the fact that I didn't know helped me to continue living my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, in a number of situations when there is a disability, especially a disability that shows, there is a lot of overprotectiveness, but there's a lot of work and advocacy work that parents have to do for their kids when they're
Hmm.
young.
Hmm.
So it's a very fine line of how much you're overprotecting
Hmm.
the child, or really supporting them, and then when they grow older, and I think that when the challenge comes, because when they grow older, you have to make sure that they also have a voice,
Hmm.
and I think within my family, like, I try to keep that in mind for my sister, because she has her own feelings, she has her own experience. We all do that. That's not just me. Ash- they won't be happy about this podcasting, Kella. No, it's true. We all do that. But there are moments where I feel like I'm the devil's advocate, kind.
Okay.
it's not a devil.
You challenge the
um,
status quo, let's say.
I even
Okay.
because even like if she's having a bad day,
Yeah.
like, we all have bad days. Having a disability, she has Down syndrome,
Okay.
Naomi. So the stereotype around persons who have Down syndrome is that they're so nice, they're always happy. No, they're not always happy. So they do have their moments as well, and they struggle. While everyone's becoming more independent and getting employed and finding their own
Yeah.
aspirations,
Yeah.
and they also have aspirations. And I mean, sometimes no, the system doesn't work in that sense. So it's of course she'll be frustrated. Of course sometimes they are frustrated, because they're not independent,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, there are different
Mm-hmm.
aspects to that reality.
Perhaps to frame it in a way that, because before we sat here and we're having this conversation, we discussed about organization psychology, and one
Yeah,
of the uh, most well-known theories is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and
yeah,
drawing from that, we all have the same basic
basic
needs,
needs, definitely.
regardless of whether we have a disability or not.
Mm.
They need to have friendship or close relationships with
Mhm.
family, the need to have good food, to have good shelter. Those are all, everyone needs those
Exactly.
regardless. Even animals do need those.
Yeah.
Um, the
The very
basic needs,
basic
the very
needs, the
basic
very
needs.
basic needs.
And um, with my work at the Lean Hospital Foundation, I became very much exposed at how much people with disabilities are, I would say, underestimated, in the sense that not in terms of abilities, but the need to find a romantic partner, for example.
Yes.
It's completely
Yes.
disregarded.
Yes.
Or the need to be in
Mm.
a circle of friends. This completely disregarded.
Definitely.
The social aspect is very much almost forgotten.
Yes, I agree. And it's difficult to change society in
Yeah.
that sense, but it's society that needs to change. So even in terms of ability, like if you we have a capitalist society which is very much focused on an ableist approach, which promotes productivity, basically.
Yes.
So these people, persons with disability, are part of the society, and they're part also of the economy.
Hmm.
So we have to factor in, first of all, the wealth they generate in the economy, because the services that they use, and even other things that are not related specifically to disability,
Hmm.
they also generate wealth in the
Hmm.
economy, and work, etc. But also, in terms of their employability as well, it's us who need to adapt in terms of their education as well. We need to make sure that the services and the different opportunities are really provided for everyone.
Hmm.
No?
In a way, it's also a vicious cycle of sorts, because through that experience, I also was in touch with families as well, and that's something that you've touched upon quite a number of times already. The importance of a family, and the importance of a support system,
Yeah.
and the importance to see what lessons we're teaching to the children. Um, I've had conversations with family who are so are protective of their child, are so afraid that they um, will get teased, will not be understood,
Yeah.
um, will not be respected, for example, and with good reason.
Yes,
With good
definitely,
reason,
definitely.
that they don't trust the work environment, for example, and it
Mhm.
becomes sort of like a vicious cycle,
Exactly.
that the employer is not trusting the parents, then the parents get involved.
It's basically what I said earlier, regarding the advocacy role that the parents
Yeah.
play, because from a young age they take on this advocacy role, because for their kid to acquire certain rights, although there should be their human rights, and
Yes.
basic, um, addressing their basic needs,
Yes.
they have to advocate for them. That then it's very difficult. It becomes part of the parent's identity as well.
Hmm.
So when the child then grows up, the element of dependency because of the impairment might still be there.
Hmm.
But at the same time, they're growing up, into a young
Yes.
person, into an adult, so they want that independence as well. But then, because it's such a strong part of the parent's identity, it's very difficult to change that, and even when there's no disability in Malta, parents sometimes feel this challenge in
Hard
the
to let go.
transition, as
Yes.
that, like letting go, exactly. I mean, it's a part of the process of life, but I understand definitely how parents of persons with
Mm-hmm.
disability find it much harder to
Mm-hmm.
transition into a supportive role instead of the main
Mm-hmm.
advocate for that
Mm-hmm.
person, you know.
Back to you. How did your life
Okay.
change since 2018? Was it right? Is that correct?
2018.
2018. How did your life
Well,
change?
uh, on so many levels, I don't know where to start. But I think one of the first and more important things is that I've become more mindful of my life. So I believe I used to live with purpose, you know, but now I do it more. I'm more conscious of living with purpose, of not kind of wasting time. Not wasting time doesn't mean like I'm productive all the time and I need to be productive, but I'm if I'm just laying down watching Netflix or whatever, um, I'm okay with it, but I'm aware that I'm doing it.
Mm.
Um, um, Definitely it affected obviously the trajectory in terms of work, because of my disability. I then became commissioner on the rights of persons with disability, which wouldn't have happened if we still didn't know that I did have a disability, even
Mm-hmm.
though I had it. Because of it's very different as well when you have a disability that shows and doesn't
Yes.
show. So there was that. Well, now I have a daughter, which was something that I wasn't very fond of having in terms of I'm someone who was always afraid of the pregnancy process. In fact, when I was young, because I earlier mentioned like I was always conscious. I remember I have this memory with my mom on her bed, and we were just laying there and talking about, I don't know what we were talking about actually, but this thought and this discussion keeps coming up in my head because I told her like when I grow up I don't want to have my own kids, and I wanted to adopt. Probably I came across something related to adoption, you know, or started becoming aware of that. And then, I mean, as I grew up, I didn't really think about it. I continued thinking about the fact that I don't want to be pregnant. Um, Eventually, after 2018, one of the things that I learned was that I cannot get pregnant because of my condition, because it would be a very high risk pregnancy. Um, uh, and when I confirmed that, I felt kind of liberated in a way and relieved from this expectation to eventually have your own child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I started the process for fostering a few years after, and now I have a daughter. So I think that is also one of the bigger changes in my life that was directly affected by my condition and becoming aware of it. Obviously, because the fact that I became aware of it prevents me from getting
Mm-hmm.
pregnant and you know having a high risk pregnancy,
Mm-hmm.
but also because it freed me kind of from this social pressure.
Duty, in a way, social duty, I would say.
Social duty, I never had any direct pressure
Yeah.
because I've always been quite career oriented. um, so I No one really came to me, ever came to me. You know, you have people who go on other people and tell them, when are you going to have kids, you know,
Yeah.
and these kind of questions. So I didn't get that, but I felt it. I still felt
And I
it.
also can see that you are quite family oriented as well. So that must have it must be something very important to you to have a family as well.
Yes.
So how to get there? Uh,
It was the how, you
yes,
know,
this
it
was
was
the
the how.
how in your case.
Although to be honest, with today's expectations in general, you know, the double burden, double shift burden kind of women as well.
Yeah.
It was something that really scared me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, uh, and I'm a single parent,
mm-hmm.
so it's, you know, the you get the pressures
Definitely.
from a lot of different aspects. But anyway, I mean, it's a good thing, you know, and now my daughter has been with me for almost 2 years.
Okay.
It's been a journey. an interesting one, but you know, it's I think one of the most beautiful things I've ever did, because you see the impact that you have on a
Sure.
child who wouldn't have had the opportunities that you can give her or him. Um, uh, so it's, and you see the growth, you know, as well. I mean, I wouldn't have another child through fostering now, because obviously, it is a challenge, you know. Just
I mean, I never had the privilege to have a conversation with someone who um, adopted, or is it fostering or adoption?
fostering,
Fostering.
fostering,
I never had
fostering.
either or. I never had a
Uh,
conversation with someone, so I know that it's a quite an arduous process, quite
f-
intensive.
I mean, fostering is not that. I mean, it is, because you know what, they're trusting you with a child. You
100%.
know, it's not
Yes.
like you're going and buying bread. They're
Yes.
trusting you with a child. So it is, and also because of my different roles in work, like I keep analyzing these processes.
Yes.
Um, Not intentionally, but it's me. So you know, you have the training, you have you apply first. There's the training program, which is like 10 weeks of training. Then
Okay.
they give you some time to kind of decide if you're for it or not going to it. Um, and then there's an assessment, which is quite, it's intense, you know, because they ask difficult questions. But I really believe in any aspect, but especially in this process, is that you be open with your social worker who's assigned to you. I'm aware that at the moment there are 50 kids who need fostering, so if I can take this opportunity to kind of maybe encourage anyone to go for it. It's not for me. It's not the fact that my daughter is fostered and all this is that is challenging. Is that it's really the intensity between my work, having a daughter,
Okay.
doing it alone.
Definitely.
And when I say alone, I do it with my extended family,
Yeah.
because I do have a very, your point was about family.
Yeah.
um, we do have a very good relationship
Well, I
within
can
my
see. I
family.
can see it, and hopefully the people here can see it too, and the people who are listening as well.
It's been a beautiful, hard journey, you know. But I wouldn't do it without them. So I involve them, even, for example, the training. My mother or my sisters would join me. I when we were doing the transition for my daughter to come and start her journey with me and my family. We also organized for my close friends and my family, like a talk with the social worker, so that
Hmm.
she can explain a bit further what w- would be more helpful for my daughter to transition in this
Hmm. Hmm.
situation, because obviously it was all new for
For
her.
sure.
Um,
How is it? I mean, because we were discussing about the process of it.
yeah.
How is it on an emotional level? Because I have a child. Uh, I'm not sure whether she knows her biological parents or not, but pretty sure that's an emotional journey.
The journey is different for everyone,
Yeah,
as in, these kids come with different
for
realities.
sure.
Um, for privacy and confidentiality purposes, I'm not going to delve into my
Definitely.
daughter's situation.
Definitely.
And we talk about these things a lot, and she doesn't consent that I talk about her situation specifically, so I respect that. Um, uh, but it's very different. In my experience, again, she does visit her mother. Um, uh, and I also try to keep a communication with her mom, a simple through a communication book,
Yeah.
you know. Um, uh, and it's helped. I mean, I've met her once, which is not something. It really depends on the situation, but it is challenging. So the hardships, they're there, you know. Children who are in fostering, they're in fostering, they're in the system because they experienced
Yeah.
some form of neglect,
Yeah.
abuse, you know, it's there. So you're really dealing with someone who has experienced trauma from a young age and who doesn't necessarily know what we consider as normal, you know, social manners, for example, and dealing with life, you know,
Hmm.
and coping mechanisms. They have their own coping, and this is all information that they give you in the training. In fact, the training focuses a lot on therapeutic parenting,
Okay.
because you're not dealing with any other child who is born in a safe environment and is brought up in a safe environment. It's children who've experienced a chaotic lifestyle. Um, but I mean, as I've said, so in 2 years, I've seen her grow, making friends, becoming more independent. She has to be more independent because obviously the
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle that we live as well. Um, uh, but it's been a beautiful journey, and I would recommend it. Some
Mm-hmm.
people are scared, for example, of some people would opt, for example, for adoption from a foreign country. Uh, Most of the time, the reason is because they wouldn't want for the biological parents to meet the kids, and because
Okay.
Malta is so small, and because of proximity. To be honest, I haven't met the parents anywhere except for the one time that it was planned.
Okay.
So today I know it's not a valid enough reason
Yeah.
and even the process how it works. So if you live in X location, they're not going to assign a child whose family is
It's in the
also in
vicinity.
X
Yes.
location.
Yes.
So it's a very thoughtful process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
May I ask how old is she?
she's 12 now.
She's 12.
She's 12.
And the reason why I'll explain the reason why I asked. I'm pretty sure, and as you were sharing as well, is your conversations between you and her are not the typical conversations that you'd have with a typical 12-year-old. Um, Especially when it comes to consent, for example, which is adds another layer of of complexity.
I'm laughing, sorry, because no, we don't have typical
For sure.
conversations
I mean,
because of my work and
yes,
my level of awareness of social issues and whatnot.
for sure.
Because I'm aware, obviously, that I need to educate her in certain aspects as well.
Yes.
Because again, for a long time she missed on certain aspects, and she has to unlearn as well some of the behaviors that she was taught. So we don't have these discussions, but I use my work as well to start these conversations when needed. um, I again, but you see the growth, because recently, for example, one of the situations was related to technology facilitated violence.
Okay.
So it was, kids and asking for images, these kind of thing. And I felt so proud. That was one of my proudest moments, because she didn't reply to the request, and she just came to me and she said, they asked me for these images, and she said, I shouldn't send them. And she did that because we have these
Rules, boundaries, I'm
not
not sure.
normal
Okay, okay,
conversations,
okay, okay.
because one time I was doing something related to sexual violence on work. I was at home, I was on my laptop. I also had the plumber. And then she saw this video on YouTube, and she started getting interested in this video.
Okay,
So that's how I managed to start a conversation about sexual violence with her.
okay.
And a lot of people are afraid to start these conversations. um, but it's for us, it's very natural to have these conversations. I talk to her as if she's a teenager, because she's very mature then
Mm,
when it comes to these different
for
social
sure.
situations. Um, um, and I know it's better to talk to her than to avoid them, and then learn from friends, or assume that what she learned was the appropriate thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, we have very open conversations about these different
Hmm.
topics, the hard topics, I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah.
If you were to pick one main lesson that you want to teach her in life, what would that be?
Mm. That's a hard one, because there are many. Um, but I think more than anything, Um, I it's very hard.
It's okay.
It's
You
very
can take
hard.
your time. I'll fill in the blanks until until you formulate
Think.
your answer. I am asking this question because recently in my coaching practice, I have been coaching quite a lot of parents who obviously are at the place of work,
Mm,
but they bring up certain challenges that they have with their children. And I've been asking this question to them because through that question, they find themselves. In fact, there's a follow up question to this related to you
okay.
once you come up with that answer.
Okay.
So hopefully that gave you enough time to formulate the answer.
I think the importance of being happy
Okay.
in life. I think that's one of the things that she's resilient, she's strong, but I think valuing small things, and that's, we'll have hardships in our life, but it's how you learn to live with those hardships and still be content with
Hmm.
with yourself, with who you are. And I know a lot of young girls and even young boys these days struggle with this. So it's not something just for my daughter. It's also like something I really want for the future generation, for everyone, just future
Hmm.
generation. Like we can be happy with doing small things. It doesn't have to be how good we are at our job or how much money we've made this week or know the new piece of technology I bought, but you know, just having quality time with family, just being present. It's not always easy to accomplish, but I find those moments more the most important after all. Yeah.
Here comes the follow up question.
Okay. Maybe I should have chosen a different answer.
It will
Okay.
still be the same.
Okay.
Why is it important for you that she and even children in general that they appreciate the little things in life?
Because I feel like we're chasing time all the time. Um, uh, like it's a constant. I also worry a lot about excess use and excess exposure to social media. So, if when we were younger, the gender norms, for example, or social expectations they were still the same, basically, but we weren't constantly bombarded with social media telling us how important it is to look this way or this way, um, that this is cool, that this is not cool, and the constant messages that it, I feel like it's too much.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
feel like it's too much. And I think that's why.
Hmm.
That's why, because the being happy, it's something from within. For me, it's an internal feeling, not
Hmm.
something that comes from external validating
I think
factors.
it's both ways.
It Yes,
We have the intrinsic and
and
extrinsic.
extrinsic, yes, but
But I get what you mean. I mean, happiness is very subjective.
exactly,
And that's why it's very difficult to make everyone happy because
exactly.
the concept of happiness is subjective.
Yes, definitely, definitely. But also that's why, because if you are always looking at the next best
Yep.
person in your opinion. So if you value money and you're always looking up for someone who's richer,
Hmm.
then even success is subjective.
Hmm.
So I feel I'm very successful, but I'm very successful because my goals were in life to actually work in these sectors.
Hmm.
Um, for someone else, they might think Samantha, you know, she's not relevant,
Hmm.
you know. But for me, I'm successful and I'm happy
Yeah.
with that because that was my goal. So for someone else, they would have different goals. But focusing on, again, money, technology, being famous, the number of
Followers.
followers on
Yeah.
social media or the number of likes,
Hmm.
it's fluid, um, and it's not about you.
Hmm.
It's not really about you. It's external, it's
Hmm. Samantha, I asked you quite a number of tough questions, I feel. And I think I'm going to use another card, which I usually
okay.
ask. Do you have a question for me?
Okay. I don't know because I've been trying to think of a question for you, so maybe stop asking
That's
me.
why I asked.
But I don't know. You know, when I zone into this, I don't, because life has become so busy as
Yeah,
well. Like I don't have the time to have these conversations quite
definitely.
a lot.
That's why I do these,
Um,
because we don't have the time to have these kind of conversations. I think
exactly,
these are the conversations that matter the most.
exactly.
Um, and actually, that was actually, I will count as you asked me a question.
Okay.
You asked me the question why I started podcasting.
All right. Yes, yes,
All
yes.
right.
That was my question.
That was one of the reasons why I started podcasting, because I feel that we should have more of these conversations, and we have finite group of friends. We have finite people that we know, and sometimes we have to step outside our known circle and have conversations with people that we don't really know, but we still learn something from them. And that's how I believe, at least for myself, grow and expand my perspectives and knowledge as well.
Yeah,
Because sometimes we get used to the people that are closest to us, and there's nothing wrong with that. They might be our main support system, but in order for us to grow and to have learn about different perspectives, we need to have conversations with different people. So
definitely.
that was
And
one
seeing
of the main
different perspectives as well, because we
100%.
don't want to end up. I have a question.
Great.
Okay. What does happiness mean to you?
What does happiness mean to me in the sense of um, how what makes me happy, or
Not
the
theoretically.
not the con of the or the concept of happiness? I flipped the tables. I'm trying
No,
to understand your
not
question.
fair.
So,
I mean, not the concept of happiness, because the concept of happiness, you know, it's theoretical. You can quote like different authors and different
okay,
researchers, but no, not that. But what what makes you happy? What makes you happy? Yes, what
okay,
makes you
let's
happy?
let's say with that. Something that really makes me happy is that I have a purpose, and that I'm providing value. Um, I think in every aspect, in everything that I do, um, and everything that I've just started in Scout as well, is that I'm always driven by a purpose, and what what I'm doing is providing value to the people.
Mm.
In fact, my mission statement for Endeavor is giving the people the skills to lead themselves so that they can lead others. Because if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. And by all means, I'm not any growth guru or something. I'm just someone who tries things and can share my experience
Mhm.
with other people, which hopefully it gives them an idea.
Mm.
That gives me joy, and that
Mhm.
brings me happiness. Usually, although I might seem different than what I'm about to explain, I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy. So I support people from behind the scenes, and now I'm trying to work on myself, for example, to be a little bit more in the front lines and to bring people along
Mhm.
from a different angle, so
Mhm.
to speak. Sure if I answered the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I really appreciate that you kind of refer to the purpose and value, because I also think that those are two very important elements in life, you know, because when you feel that you have purpose, I think that's something that actually drives happiness.
Hmm.
Um, because you feel valuable and you
Yeah.
feel valued as well in society in general. And when you have purpose, you know, you're driven towards something. So you're focused on that, not
Yes.
on the other external factors and
Yeah.
others' validation, but
Hmm.
on what you're trying to accomplish as well.
And finding purpose is not as easy as one
No.
might seem. You can read as many books, you can watch as many reels, TikToks, or YouTube videos,
Mm-hmm.
and you still not find. You're still in a place where you feel lost.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go into a little bit deeper on that is that I have different purposes in different areas. So, for example, the podcast, I have a different purpose for it, and it gives me a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In Scouts, for example, gives me a different purpose, and I give a different purpose. In my business, the same thing. So there is an overarching theme, all I
Yeah.
believe, and that's driven by our values and beliefs. But we can have individual purposes um, in the activities that we
Mm-hmm.
do, and usually, and unfortunately, I would say that purpose becomes work.
Mm.
Maybe because I'm biased because of my line of work, but to say so. But in most
Mm.
cases, um, work becomes our purpose. And why
Mm.
is that? Unfortunately, because staying at work becomes easier than spending time with family
Mhm.
and building relationships outside the place of work.
Mhm. I think it's when the original purpose, let's say, and the work align, then it's very difficult to have this work-life balance that
Hmm.
we try to establish, which doesn't exist for
Yes.
anyone, which is very euphoric to
Yes.
have. Um, uh, to have this work-life balance, but I think, like, because I also feel it, because my purpose, so my dream in life was to be the commissioner on gender-based violence and
Okay,
domestic
so you knew
violence.
it from. You're
Yes.
one of those people. I had a friend in Scouts. He wanted to become a medical doctor since the age of 7. He wanted to become a medical, and he is now a medical doctor. I never had that kind of um,
From a
moment.
young age.
Okay.
To be honest, I mean, I've changed like what career I want in my life, and I still sometimes say like when I grow up I want to be
Well,
um,
you're still young.
relatively young, so
Yes,
it
yes.
counts. Um, uh, and I think then when I started studying social policy for my degree, and then I had a placement, and I one of my placements was with the National Commission for the Promotion of Equality, and Rini Laivira is the commissioner there. We're good friends now, and I remember thinking, wow, you know, this is what I want to be doing. So I really figured it out when I was doing my degree, not from a very young age. From a younger age, I wanted to be advocating on domestic violence, gender-based violence, um, uh, and I don't I I don't know. I really don't know how it happened eventually,
Hmm.
because um, but I was always focused, so from a young age. So not specifically on how I became commissioner here, but from a young age through my activism, I used to make it a point not just to go to the conferences for Women's
Hmm.
Day and the conferences relevant to the topic, but I remember like telling myself, get up, think of a comment, and get up and say something, because, and this is again like a message that is, I think, important in terms of networking, visibility, leadership as well. um, like, you need to be seen. It's not enough just staying behind a laptop and
Yeah.
working, and if it's something that you want to be seen doing, obviously, if you want it, you have to be seen as on. You need, people need to start thinking, who's that young girl
Hmm.
talking? And usually the average age was much bigger than, like,
Yeah.
I think I was maybe 16, 17 at the time,
Hmm.
and I would make myself get up. I was really shy. Like, obviously used to think like, what am I gonna say with all these experts here?
Hmm.
And you know, I'm just gonna say something.
Yes.
And I would say something from my experience, for example. So
Hmm.
that didn't need to be um, uh, technical or an expert perspective. It
Hmm.
would be my experience, or something me and my friends spoke about. So it's like us young girls, or when I talk to young men, this is what they think, and I think that really helped me build the network, to now being where I am today.
Hmm. So it's like stepping outside your comfort zone in a way.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely outside of my comfort zone. um, yeah.
my takeaway from that is that apart from stepping outside of your comfort zone and pushing yourself to do something which feels uncomfortable, but there's a lot of learning in it, is that you are trying to dissect what is being said and to formulate your own opinion in it. Um, what we know as critical thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's very important that um, young adults, youths are exposed to that because
Yeah.
we need to formulate our own um, ideas, perspectives, and thoughts and opinions on this. And we might need time to think about it as well.
Mhm.
Sometimes we encounter a phrase or a situation, or we need time to think about it. We need to ask our mentor, friends, peers, whatever. in order to come up
An
with an
opinion.
answer and opinion.
Mhm.
And I personally, that is because you mentioned technology and all of these things earlier on as well. Um, with the increased usage of AI, that is the challenge as well, because we're just um, and I'm very fond of AI, so I'm not against AI for sure. Um, it's about learning how to formulate an answer and um, find an opinion, and just not just input and output. Is the um,
Yes,
garbage in, garbage out
yes.
kind of analogy.
And I think like on I very strong I feel very strongly about this topic because I feel like education as it is today for young children in schools today is not catching up with the reality of technology. And I spoke about this because even us as policymakers, it's very difficult to be proactive rather than reactive because obviously we're not the innovators.
Yeah.
So we are all the time lagging behind when it comes to technology. And I spoke about this in terms of technology facilitated violence. Um, but also when it comes to young children as well, not just young children, because even adults, not everyone has critical thinking skills. Not everyone was given the
Yeah.
opportunity or exposed to critical thinking. So, you know, with algorithms, like if I like seeing cats, then I'm gonna get more cats. So if I like hate speech, I'm going to get more hate speech. And I'm not going to be able to filter between if I'm not critical. I'm not going to be able to realize that that's hate speech and this is not
Mm-hmm.
appropriate. So I also feel very strongly about the fact that we need to educate our children. And going back to my daughter, you know, that's why I have these conversations, these hard
Mm.
conversations with her, because they're necessary. Because if she's seeing TikTok and she's seeing some stuff which are not healthy, you
Mm-hmm.
know, we see them together sometimes and we filter kind of through this process, you know, and she does know that sometimes something is not real but it's funny, for
Okay.
example. um not always, and sometimes she does show me things and say and show and tells me like but this is happening, and I have to say no, that's not happening, because apart from the algorithms there's also deep fakes and AI generated
Yeah.
content, you know. So for young people who haven't been exposed to, who don't have some aspects of knowledge
Yeah.
in terms of the content that we learn in school, it's very difficult, you know, but it has to be us as policymakers as well
Mm-hmm.
to change the system that we work in, so that we maybe at least try to catch up or update ourselves enough, you know, to
Some
the realities of today.
I think some good questions that I found myself asking myself, and in my conversations with young people through Scouts, when it comes, because this is about beliefs, finding yourself in your beliefs and morality, what's right or wrong, is asking yourself the question: what is right, what is good, and what is bad? And for me, what is good for me, and what I define as good, the definition of good for me, and as well the definition of bad. What I do I why what do I understand by this term, and how I feel about it. So I think sort of like how to condense that, and that's a first step, is that what's good for me, what's bad for me, and how do I feel about it.
But at the same time, our ideas of what's good for me, bad for me, and how I feel about it is very much based on what we learn
For sure, yes,
from
yes,
different avenues. So
yes.
not just education, like from our families, from the socialization that
Let's stay on
we
the topic of, of,
experience.
of violence. I mean, I think most people would agree that hitting someone is bad.
Yes,
Based on what you learn, yes, because that might be the only way you understand how to get things, for example, because if you are brought up in a violent environment, and that's how the only way you know how you get your way, basically, that's all you know.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
at the same time, there's a general consensus that we feel that hitting people is bad.
But then you have situations where, um, even though we agree that it's bad, if no one else is seeing us, so like in terms of domestic violence,
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
there are people who are like, you would say like he's the best man in the world, like
Mm,
such a good lad, or she's the best person in the world, and but at home they're violent, for example,
yeah.
or they feel it's justified,
Mm-hmm.
or because okay, you think it's bad to hit someone, but because of the value you assign based on gender, on race, on different
Mm-hmm.
demographics and different aspects of one's identity, then maybe it's justifiable because of the humanization. So, for example, we agree that um, war is bad,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, like we're seeing war happening in our on our phones,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we know it's happening, but because we're also distant from it, we're not actively doing something about
Yeah.
it, you know. So it's again about perceptions, about value,
Mm-hmm.
about whether I have enough time to do
Mm-hmm.
because we also talk about the bystander effect when we're talking about gender-based violence and
What is the
domestic
bystander
violence.
effect?
So the bystander effect is I see someone hitting someone else, and I think that's not my problem. I'm not going to involve
Okay.
myself in it. Um, so we agree that violence is bad, but not doing something about it. Is it bad or not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, it's not good enough. You know, we need to be doing something about it constantly because someone else is hurting. And they
Mm-hmm.
could you could be their only hope in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. Um, so there are a lot of ways how one can justify, or I would be willing to go and support them, but I'm scared, which is fair if, like make sure that you're safe as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I call the police, then would I have to be involved in in the procedures? So no, I'm going to take a step back, when you could really be saving someone's
Yeah.
life.
What are the general misconceptions when it comes to domestic violence and gender-based violence?
So for starters, gender-based violence is the umbrella term.
Okay.
And domestic violence is violence that happens within an intimate relationship.
Okay.
So you have partner violence, you have um, parent to child, child to parent abuse as well, different forms of intimate setup
Okay.
violence. A misconception is that you have to be living together with your partner, for example, to be considered as domestic violence. You don't have to. If you're in an intimate relationship, then it's still domestic violence, so
Okay.
girlfriend and boyfriend, whatever. Um, uh, then gender-based violence is the different. It's violence because of your gender.
Okay.
So it generally affects women mostly and predominantly, because in our society, um, because of gender roles, stereotypes, not everyone's going to agree, but the
It's a
underlying,
controversial topic.
exactly. I mean, I don't see how it is controversial, but it is. Um, the underlying assumption is that women are less valuable than men,
Hmm.
and that's what leads to, and that's why earlier I mentioned the value that we assign,
Okay.
because if you think someone is beneath you, then you're okay to feel power over them and you want to feel power over them. So the generally the idea of gender-based violence and domestic violence is that it happens because of power and control. So it's not having two equal people and one of them decides to hit someone else.
Mhm.
It's someone showing their power and maintaining their control over someone else by expressing violence. Now, it doesn't have to be physical violence, it can also be manipulation, for example, psychological abuse. So threatening someone that they're going to hurt them, that's still manipulation and psychological abuse. Verbal violence. So convincing, literally, you would be manipulating someone into believing that they are unworthy,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
no one would love them if they leave them, or that they are not good enough to get a job, for
Mhm.
example,
Mhm.
so that they stay financially dependent on the perpetrator. So there are a lot of different forms of violence. And when we're talking also about technology, now we have a bigger issue whereby, for example, I've mentioned earlier requesting these intimate images, for example. And there are young girls, young children who are, young boys who are asking for these photos, and young girls not realizing the consequences of sharing these photos. And the consequences are great because if someone, if I send my photo, a nude photo to someone else, and they decide to share it, if it's with their friends or if it's on social media for everyone to see it, the psychological harm that it would have, the shame on on the victim, it's huge. It's huge, because you wouldn't know who saw it or not. So the next time you're going out, you're thinking someone that person
Yes.
saw it, or did they see it, did they not, or someone is making fun of them, because then in schools, for example, there's bullying as well. So if their school friends saw it, they're going to comment about it and bully that person
Mhm.
on that image. So the consequences, and it's all about power and control again, because the perpetrator ultimately exerts power on that person.
Mm.
And if they have the image, and instead of sharing it, they threaten that person to send them money, to do whatever they want them to do, just for the sake of it, just so that, because otherwise they would share that image. The consequences are
I see.
traumatizing. And I've had the opportunity just recently to go in some schools, where we spoke about this technology facilitated violence, the consent, issues related to consent. And I mean, I wasn't really that surprised, but around 30% of the kids, we used Slido to do a
Yes.
quick quiz. And like around 30% of these kids said that they were asked to send their intimate images.
Okay.
And I'm talking here about middle school and secondary school
Why do they
years.
comply though? To conform with societal norms or?
They don't necessarily. So we didn't ask
Okay,
if they
why?
comply, if they
Okay.
did comply. Um, but I mean, we also spoke with the psychosocial support in the school and told them, like,
My question is
take
that
care of these kids.
this has been around for quite a while in the sense that the sharing of intimate
Mhm.
photos, I mean, perhaps not as much in youngsters now, because now in the present they have more access to a smartphone, for example, but this concept has been around for quite a while.
Yes.
So why? So my question is that why do young people do not understand that sending an intimate photo is dangerous or inappropriate?
Because first of all, if no one is talking to them about it,
Okay,
they don't know the consequences.
okay,
They don't know the consequences of what can happen with that image. They don't know that if once it's online, it's online. And someone can actually access, even if it's on your phone, someone can actually access your phone, hack your phone, and take that
mm,
image as well. So the risks are just even there, just by taking a picture.
okay,
um, Obviously there, it's not legal, it's considered a crime, but
yeah,
still, it's not about, because it's not just about prosecution, it's about preventing yourself from being in these
100%.
situations, because the harm is too much.
Mhm,
And also, like, knowing what you're getting yourself involved in,
mhm.
and the consequences. So again, these conversations, the hard conversations, we need to have. But apart from that as well, I think it's been normalized. I think it's being normalized. So again, with my daughter and her friends, like, I know, I can see it, that it's been normalized, and it wasn't one person who asked them for a picture, and they said no. It's a number of people, a number of young men, who
Mhm.
ask for these images
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
such a young age. And then we have a situation where the school education, they're responsible for what happens in the school,
Mhm. Mhm.
but then the the kids don't have the support system that exists in the schools for what happens outside of school,
Mhm.
you know? So if I go to a guidance teacher to talk about it, they would consider it and they would
Yeah.
talk about it. But if a parent goes and tells them, X boy asked my daughter for that image, um, they, they, they wouldn't really, I mean,
Mm.
they would keep an eye, and
Mhm.
identify other issues, because it's not just about asking for
For sure.
the issues are broader than that. But it's generally, and again, sorry, but the content that they see as well online,
Hmm.
that they're exposed to. So it's, I mean, all right, there are the kind of age checks,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
these
The
things.
parental
Ma,
restrictions. I mean, I'm not sure whether they work or not. To be honest, I haven't
not
either.
very well, I can say.
You can say, but um, I mean, the question that's coming up to mind is, where did we fail? Because if this has been normalized, it's a societal issue, and there's no one clear answer to it. But clearly, there are a lot of gaps and a lot of failing points in this.
I think one of the issues is that policymakers are always catching up. Technology innovators, they're creating. And then there are consequences that us policymakers have to face because of the technology that's been created,
But
such
you think it's
as,
the responsibility of just policymakers? I mean,
no, I'm not saying it is, it's just the
I think it's
responsibility.
more than
No,
that.
no, it's more.
Sure. I mean, for
No, no,
starters, parents,
it's more.
educators,
But
and
but
yep.
at the same time, policy and legislation, it can either derive from a societal change.
Mhm.
And again, my work is in policy. I love it.
Yeah.
So that's why maybe I'm a bit focused on that. But you can either, because of societal change, you change the legislation to adapt to the new realities, or else legislate to have societal change. Now, in this situation, we have a
Mm.
situation where technology brought about these societal changes.
Mm-hmm.
The technology didn't create the abuse.
No. Yeah.
It's a new way of being abusive, basically,
Agreed.
a new tool, a new means
Yes.
to being abusive. Um, Now it's our job again as policymakers, and that's why as a commission we're trying to grasp this issue of technology facilitated violence, because and again, it's not just us. So when I say we're trying to grasp the topic, it's also involving people in technology,
I
involving the
think, yeah.
industry.
Yes.
First of all, because if I try to do something now, it's going to be relevant for the next year, because
For sure.
technology is very fast. You know,
And
so
the
it's very important
generational,
to work from a
sorry.
holistic approach.
And the generational gap is shorter than ever. I mean, a generation, the past used to be considered 25 years.
Yeah.
Now, if you're speaking to someone who is, let's say, 5 years younger than you, even the language, even the use of emojis is different. For example,
Yes.
it's a
Yes. Yes.
totally different language and way of communicating.
Mhm.
So um, I can only imagine. I'm not a parent myself, but I can only imagine that parents are not have no idea of what's there if they're not technology savvy, or they are into technology, or they follow trends as well, or they are in touch with trends. They have no idea that these things exist.
Yeah, I used to consider myself again quite young, and and I do consider myself as quite cool. No, like I'm a chill person
Yeah,
overall. And again, I have these conversations with my daughter, so I thought I'm. I
yeah,
think I know quite
yes.
a lot. But then I was doing some research for work related to technology facilitated
Hmm.
violence, and I came across this kind of dictionary of, I think, for Tinder, or like, one of these websites that, and it refers to what the terms that young people are using. And I was like, what's this? What's this? Or I realized, no, I'm not that cool and not that young. But it's true. So the language. One time my daughter came and told me I have Riz or something like that, and I was like, what's Riz? And she explained to me,
Yes,
but
yes,
until I figured out exactly what she was saying and what she
yes,
was referring to, like, you've got traits. I think it means like you're cool, or
yes, yeah,
like I really like it's a
yes.
flirtatious kind of thing, but it's Riz, and that's when I started kind of exploring more,
Hmm.
kind of these different terminologies, or
Hmm.
Yeah, I forget what they are. Even the emojis, for example.
Yes, yes,
Recently, I think with one of the recent serious adolescents,
yes,
which
yes.
has created quite a
I was going to mention it as well because
yeah.
these things are quite evident there.
Yes, I've seen it once, but honestly, I need to see it again
Yep,
because I need to kind of
it's not that long. It's just
analyze
four
it.
episodes.
No, it's not long, but it's intense. It's very
Yes.
intense. And again, so even though I'm involved in this work, it was an eye opener for me.
Mm.
So, let alone for people who are not exposed to these realities, because I speak ultimately from a point of privilege,
Yeah.
because I have this knowledge, because I work in this in this
Yeah.
field. So I can translate that and discuss, have these conversations with my daughter. But not everyone, not no parents, just
Mm.
general public, is not aware of these realities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a very good move with this series, that they actually focus so much on the not the fact that the homicide happened, the femicide happened, but the why it happened and all
And the how as well, and the how in the
the
sense they mentioned
process,
the
how
process of
they got
it.
there,
Yes.
they got to that situation. And again, like if I saw a red pill on Instagram, like I wouldn't think of it as a red pill. For me, it's like a stop or something like that, or a clown
Yes.
nose, that. So, but it made us have these conversations as well and opened our eyes in terms of emojis and the language that younger people are talking with.
Very interesting. I mean, it's a completely different take on the thing that we use so casually,
Yeah.
but might mean different
Mm,
differently.
mm,
What I've noticed that and it happens in the series as well. And you mentioned that the red pill and the blue pill. It originated from the Matrix, as the series highlights as well. I mean, the father of that young boy.
uh,
The origins of it, our generation knows the origins of it,
mhm.
but how it's used today and how it's understood, it is very similar yet completely different. But the younger people today do not know the origins
The
of it.
origins.
So it's very, very interesting that we know the origins of it. We kind of missed a chapter or two, and now we're at a different. We're at the ending of it.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
also very wise, Emma, to use
Very
something
wise.
which uh, the people from an older generation would identify it with something that is
Yes,
not necessarily. I'm not
wrong or
familiar
harmful.
with Matrix, to be
Yes, yes,
honest, so
no.
it's not necessarily relevant to the context that's being used
Yes,
today. So again, like it's very targeted towards
yep,
the younger people
yes,
specifically, and this all has to do, again, like with the algorithms, with the radicalization as well of
yes,
young men, especially in this context, and their mental health issues and targeting. And I think that's where we also struggle in terms of, because most of the time we are focused on young women and girls, um, even like in our work, but also making sure that we engage young men and boys in these conversations, not just because violence affects women predominantly, but why does it affect men? Why do men feel that they need to be powerful, that they need to be dominant, that, even like when growing up, that they have, I don't know, like all these different aspects that make a man manly, of masculinity, let's say, you know, um, uh, and toxic masculinity ultimately,
yes,
because it's not about being a man and being,
yes.
you,
The
you can
series
have
also.
a healthy men and
Yes,
positive
yes.
men, positive masculinity, but why do young men feel the need to grow up to be toxic men?
And to hurt people as well.
Exactly.
Um, I think the series, no spoilers for everyone who haven't who haven't
Oops.
watched it. The series cleverly portrays that men are victims, and they do what they do, or they did what they did because they are ultimately victimized and um, marginalized as well. So there is the dominant, not only in the series as well. There is this feeling that there is a strong clan culture online.
Mhm.
Clan culture existed since the age of time, But there is a strong clan culture. Either you're one of us or you're not.
Or you're not.
And if you're with that clan, then you're this, and this.
Mhm.
So there is another layer of complexity in, in what we understand, that you're one of us and or you're not one of us. So there's
Hmm. It's it's basically as well like when it comes to radicalization, it's how generally young men are recruited, because not radicalization in this sense only, but radicalization even when it comes to racism and terrorism groups, for example, because they latch on the fact that they feel excluded by society, the young men, that they're not connected, or that. I mean, again, in the schools, I've had these conversations, and why are you talking about women, not men? We have to talk about men too, and we do have to talk about men. But why are you not willing to listen to what we have to say about women?
Mhm.
you know why does the conversation always have to be like, if we're talking about women, why does it have to be why not men? But when we're talking about men, we're not saying why not women.
Mhm.
you know so there are a lot of different aspects, and these groups and these I mean personalities. We do have to mention the likes of Andrew Tate, for example, and um, I mean Donald Trump,
Yes.
you know, and the messages that they send and the way they recruit these young men
Mhm.
through the different groups and the incel groups, and
Mhm.
it's a very smart way as well. But again, like the activists, the people with a social cause,
Yeah.
we're not using those methods. We're not um, reaching out before the
Mhm.
incels do. You know.
And it's going back to our part of the podcast as well, um, the purpose part.
Yes.
It became extremely difficult to find purpose because of this, all of this noise.
Yes.
So looking inwards, although I think that's the main thing that we need to do to, in quote unquote, fix this, is to look inwards. Everyone needs to do so. It is very, very difficult to do so because of all the noise that exists
Mhm.
around us.
But it's us who have to give the young people the tools, because from a young age, like you wouldn't know how to cope with life. You wouldn't know
Hmm.
like what's good or bad,
Yeah.
like what we were saying, or how to be critical. These are all tools and skills that we need to be giving these young
Yes.
people. So it's very important that we also help them identify their purpose in life and not
Hmm.
wait for a radicalization group to tell
Yes.
them this is your purpose now, because that's one of the things that
Yeah.
they focus on, like giving them purpose,
Hmm.
and finding themselves within that purpose. But the purpose, at least from my perspective, is a bad purpose, kind of. It's
Yes.
radicalization.
And from their perspective, at least from my understanding, is that some young people find it easier to be given purpose rather than to develop one of their own.
Of their own, and because it's hard work to find your own purpose.
100%.
you know
100%.
it's hard work. Yes, again, it's and it also relates to this discussion has been a lot about social and technology.
Yes, it's true.
But it also relates to this idea of immediate gratification,
Hmm.
because the hard work, you need to do hard work to have these inner conversations,
Hmm.
to become self-aware, to know what you want in life, to discover different options in life, and
Hmm.
then identify what you want, not just
Hmm.
find the first thing and then I want that.
Hmm.
But the idea of instant gratification, so technology affects the way we get gratification. So if we get 10 likes as soon as we upload a photo, that's
Yeah,
instant gratification.
for sure.
So it's easier than actually working hard on creating a podcast, and then getting the 10 likes because you have content which makes sense and which
Yeah.
is interesting,
Hmm.
you know?
Final question, I would say.
Okay.
Before we jump into the
Okay, I thought
yeah,
we were skipping the
no,
fishbowl.
will not, will not, will not.
Okay.
Most of the growth schema followers are adults, so
Okay.
obviously the topics are mostly adult oriented, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, so if you have one message for any adult, being male, female, or
Anyone.
anyone, a human being, what would that be?
have the hard conversations, especially with the young children, with the young people. I know sometimes it's hard to hear the tough, tough words, and it's always nice to be liked instead of being the one who's not scolding, but telling like the truth and
Yeah.
putting the cards on the table. But I think if we really want to empower the young people in our lives, I think that's the best way to go about it. By having these hard conversations, by educating them, being open, and finding time for them as well. I mean, I know it's hard. Like I'm
It's hard.
in this constant juggle between work, life, and my daughter and everything. But I think I think it's not about the hours of day that we do spend with the kids, but connecting with them, so that they feel that they can talk to you back, that they feel the connection. They can, you can support them in creating this purpose, and finding this purpose as well by having the open conversations.
Great answer.
Thank you very much.
As promised.
Okay.
So please
I
choose.
don't know
No?
what to expect, what kind of questions these are.
I think there's much more simple in most cases.
Than the questions we
Yes.
spoke about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. Drum roll. No. What's one book that significantly impacted your personal growth?
Are you an avid reader?
Hmm?
Are you an avid reader or I'm a sporadic reader?
I love reading.
Okay.
I don't always have time to read, but I do read books on self growth, and these kind of books. I'm trying to remember because there are many, but I don't always remember names of books.
Okay.
I focus much more on the content. But I think Mark Manson. I forgot the name of the book. It focuses just on that, on life lessons and
Let me look it
and
up for you.
growth. It's an orange book.
It's an
Mark
orange book.
Manson. It's an orange book. It has a bad word in it.
I think I know the one.
Ah.
Mark Manson. Let me see.
I can't.
Subtle art.
No.
Subtle art of not giving.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
It's the orange one. Of
Yes,
course,
it is.
there are two.
All right.
Yes. And I think I read that book when right after I had my first surgery, so 2018, while I was still adapting kind of to the different realities, and it helped me to focus on purpose, to take things slow, to set priorities in that sense as well, and allow myself to take time and live in that period, that particular period that I was living in. Yeah, that's the book. It was quite hard still.
Fair enough.
Because it was a memory game more than anything.
Well, I would have found it hard as well because I don't read as much books. So, well done for answering the question.
At least.
Samantha, thank you for being here. It's
Thank
been a
you
pleasure
for having
having
me.
a
It was
conversation today.
interesting.
I'm glad you found it interesting as well. So I know that you go a lot of interviews and TV programs as well. So
Yeah, but we don't get this much time to talk about like our lives, and
yes,
so it's usually it's more about work and this, which is very important and it's part of the job.
Yes.
But this was more introspective as well. So yeah, it was very interesting as well.
thank you,
Thank you.
Samantha.